Please welcome Andy Conduit-Turner, Director of Sales and Technology Enablement at Cartus, and Michael McCartan, Area Vice President from Ideas, with Laura Marchand, Partner Success Manager at AltoVita.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. We are almost there, I promise. I swear that's the last. And the drinks reception and awards ceremony are just moments away, so please stay with us a little bit more and we'll be able to enjoy a lovely cocktail together. But first, we are going to have a little bit of fun, actually. Guess what? We're going to predict future. To do that, please welcome Michael and Andy. So before we start, thank you for them. So before we start, let's hear a little quick introduction from our two speakers.
So my name is Andy Conduit-Turner. I work for Cartus, who are one of the large relocation management companies which provide end-to-end services for people moving nationally, internationally. If they can move there, we send them there. I work on the growth enablement team. Very short version because it's the last session. My job is answering questions. I'm not a salesperson. I tell salespeople what to say.
Hi, and I'm Michael McCartan. I'm Vice President for Ideas. Ideas, if you don't know, is the world's leading hotel revenue management system. We currently have 30,000 hotels worldwide using our services. But what you might not know is that a large chunk of that portfolio is actually extended stay. We have a very robust extended stay module, and as we'll discuss in a few minutes, we're seeing a lot of growth in that area.
Great, thank you. Welcome again. So now our two guests will hopefully share some intel and strategic insights. So we have just 20 minutes. Promise it's going to be very quick. So this is going to be a rapid fire type of panel. So, Michael, let's start with you. The extended stay is set to grow again next year. You even told me recently that it was blossoming. So can you share any stats or figure about this?
Yeah, before I came on the panel, I did check to see that I had the right information. And STR were, probably no surprise to this audience, that STR were predicting that the global brands were looking to increase their inventory in the extended stay sector by 50%. So they're really investing it. They understand the attractiveness of it, and they're putting a lot of money and effort behind that. I think from our perspective, what is interesting is that we're seeing a very high adoption of automated pricing decision making within that sector. Probably a third of our growth this year has come from that sector, predominantly, interestingly enough, in France and the UK. And I would say that a lot of that growth has been fueled, one, because the revenue management teams or the commercial teams within extended stay are quite lean. They don't have the same sort of robustness that maybe a traditional hotel company has. And secondly, trying to predict and forecast extended stay demand is really difficult. So to have algorithms do that for you really saves a lot of time and allows you to price more accurately. But also it gives you an opportunity to balance your extended stay with your short stay. I kind of think of it like Tetris. If you're playing Tetris with the extended stay, the likelihood of blocking out some short stay opportunities and vice versa with blocking out long stay opportunities with overselling short stay becomes really tricky if you don't automate that with intelligent analytics.
Good, thank you. Andy, obviously, as you just mentioned, you work with a lot of different companies. What mobility trends are you predicting in 2024?
Prediction, really, like highball one is, it's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be really difficult. It's going to be diverse. People want different things depending on their industry, the range of people they're hiring, where they're hiring them from. But there are some areas that we can start to look at. Sustainability, you just heard several people talk about it today, probably touch on it a bit later. That's going to be a factor, particularly our clients that are based in Europe, in the Nordics as well, really focused on these areas. Regardless even of what their mobility people think now, procurement are making these decisions non-negotiables. But also looking at the way that people's profiles of employees are changing. So one of the sessions that we were really surprised by this year is a session we thought was going to be a fairly small one, a couple of potential clients came to us and they wanted to know a little bit more about rotational assignments. We put some information together, we did some benchmarking for them, and that grew into a small panel, an online session we were going to do. It became the largest attended session that we ran all year, massively oversubscribed. We had to change the format to accommodate a much, much larger audience in the end. And this really speaks to the way that the profile of people's hiring might be changing. If you look generationally, younger generations entering the workforce now, they're not expected to stay with a company as long as even just the previous generation. And so really, a lot like we're talking for the individual moves that we're supporting and looking at those experiences, they're looking at an experience within an assignment. So rotational assignments, you're getting people's buy-in to stay with you for a couple of years by sending them, hey, I'm going to have you spend a year with us in the UK, but stick with us because then in a year's time, you'll do 6 months in Germany doing a different role, and then you'll learn something in one of our Asian offices. So actually trying to get these people in to invest in that career by experience and really harnessing that passion for travel that people have, an area that a lot of people are taking interest in and looking at program design and flexible mobility as well, giving people choices. So you haven't got to have 100 policies, you have to give people equity of choice and let them choose the services that are going to be important to them.
Yeah, interesting, thank you. Yes, you mentioned it just now, sustainability will continue to be obviously a focus for next year. So Andy, can you share what Cartus is doing and what you think more firms will be doing in 2024 then?
Yeah, I can certainly. So Cartus, as of, check my watch, a couple of months ago now, we made the decision, a lot like Kieran mentioned earlier as well, to sign up with science-based targets via SBTi. One of, at time of recording, 2 of the RMCs that have done so. Some others have said they are going to commit, but haven't submitted that letter just yet. And I'm going to quote Carolina here on the front row of this, my favorite quote about pursuing sustainable goals. Something Carolina said to me over in the US earlier this year. It's about communication, collaboration, and just a tiny bit of pressure. And that is what is going to make the changes work for us and what's going to make them stick. It's certainly what influenced our company, because this is where it comes from, our clients and potential clients. I have a team that went from just a couple of years ago responding to RFPs and showing our willingness and our interest in doing something sustainable to clients coming to us and saying, we're very keen to work with you, but for this procurement decision, for you to be a viable partner for us, you must meet this bar, which increasingly is becoming, have you got science-based tangible targets set, or are you willing to set some within a given time? So that is coming from the large corporates that we work with, and they're asking us to have scope 3, which means that we as a supplier that then work with other suppliers within a value chain are pretty much pushed to putting that pressure down to the suppliers that we work with as well. So having some of those tools to be able to say where your spend is, being able to tell people you're spending sustainably, being able to truly evidence that we are trying to make a difference in this one, and engaging all of the partners we work with across every lane of service that we support is going to become increasingly important just to stay in the game. Europe is further ahead than some other territories right now. They're not in the room, I can say it's the US. They will catch up. They are starting to get on with the legislation that's coming into force now that is going to really make those levels of reporting mandatory. Performance in this area is going to be key. I know you're balancing that against cost, but put your hand up if you can tell me a time that cost wasn't a factor for people. It's always never going to go away, so being able to perform in these other areas parallel to cost, it's going to become hugely important.
Nice, thank you. Now, let's talk about technology. 2023 will be the year of ChatGPT, and I guess it's safe to say AI will be a big topic again in 2024. Michael, what's going to be for you the biggest tech trend for the accommodation sector in 2024?
Yeah, I'll deal with it in sort of two parts. The first part is really I'll see the continuation of automated decision making. I think one of the previous speakers spoke about using technology to free up humans to do what humans do best, to be empathetic, to engage with customers and things like that, and make their jobs a little bit more interesting and exciting. Not having to analyze lots and lots of data and come to pricing decisions. So I think the trend that we're already seeing will only accelerate. I think there will be more trust in automation, in the automatic pricing decision making that happens, and the adoption will accelerate. A further trend, I think, will come about in trying to not manage revenue, top-line revenue, but actually look at profitability. And that means you need to understand more about your guests, who your most profitable guests are, where they're coming from, what the source markets are, really understand more about them, and then understand your costs. And at the moment, the ecosystem that we operate in doesn't really allow us to get access to either the guest information or your cost information. So the decision-making that we're making in terms of what price to charge what guests is somewhat flawed and limited. As the ecosystem opens up and allows us to ingest more valuable data, a lot more businesses are going to start looking at profitability. And if I take a short-term guest, then my cleaning costs are X, and really the cost of that guest is Y, versus someone who stays longer is a more profitable guest, and also what they spend on site, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's going to be a trend, maybe not next year, but in sort of the next 24 months, more businesses are going to ask about profitability, not just top-line revenue.
Okay, thank you. Staying with you, Michael, talking about obviously operation, which is obviously key in our industry. When we spoke earlier, you mentioned you thought the labor crisis and obviously the understaffed situation will still be impacting 2024. How is that?
Yes, definitely, and again, without sort of harping on about that, but I think that's why these lean teams that we're seeing, they can't be spending time doing redundant, sort of meaningless tasks. So without doubt, the human resource is going to remain a problem, but that's only going to accelerate the adoption of technology. So, make what I'll call lean teams, allowing the teams to do, actually perform at a higher level, but with fewer resources. So, for sure, I think that's not just a short-term trend. That's going to be almost the way that we do business moving forward. Really rely on the technology to help us achieve much higher, better results, high performance.
Yeah, the new standard, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So now there are some major events ahead. One that is close to my heart is the Olympics in France. Can either of you share any advice? Can hospitality operators prepare for this kind of major events?
I would say the Olympics in France is a great example of a huge event which is going to affect the entire country, certainly the cities where the stadiums are. But I would also never undervalue the knowledge that your local teams have to provide insight into not only global events. The global event is almost a no-brainer because people will expect that. If you're in the US and you're sending someone to France next year, you'll be even over there, you'll think, hang on, there's an Olympics there this year. I need to think about what the summer's going to look like. But when you're moving people, especially your manufacturing clients who maybe have things outside of hub locations, manufacturing hubs, think about those events that are local to the markets that you have and where you can be providing value to share with them. I was in Harrogate, a small town in the north of the country in November this year. There was a comic convention there. You cannot find a hotel anywhere. When I live in Perth in Scotland and when the races are on, you can't get a taxi all weekend because these smaller markets will be entirely saturated by an event, not a global event, so people around the world might not have heard about it, but the insights that you can provide based on your market and based on your data, what clients that you have, and you're saying, hey, these people usually send people to me in this, I can share these insights with them, encourage people. And we talk a lot about this at Cartus, that the value chain relationship should work in both directions. It shouldn't be that a corporate tells us something that we then tell to the suppliers that we work with. It works both ways. you can tell us information or directly to those other clients that you're working with directly as well, and tell them what you need, the decisions you need to give them optimal pricing and optimal availability. Hey, think about booking early. Hey, think about a block booking if you want to guarantee availability. Speak up, say what you need. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, events are interesting, and I think, if you look at the Olympics, and every single Olympics, hotels have pushed their prices, and accommodation providers have pushed their prices up in the expectation that they're going to sell out at these really high rates. The reality, I think, without exception, is that the pickup is much weaker than they expect, that without failure, they all have to start discounting much closer to arrival because they got greedy and they wanted to protect their inventory, etc., etc. And you combat that by actually having insights into getting the data to tell you a story. Whether it's Ed Sheeran announcing a concert at short notice and suddenly there's a surge of demand that you didn't expect, or whether it's an Olympics that's well planned, well into the future, but the pickup isn't there, the demand isn't there, the data will tell you a story, particularly when you start looking at not just your historical data patterns, but actually future things. So things that are happening in real time that give you a very strong indication of that future demand, and then you can react in real time to that future demand. And again, this is where science and AI have an advantage over humans. They can, interpret thousands and thousands of data points to tell a story which we as humans just can't comprehend.
Nice, thank you. So staying with the theme of destinations, we mentioned even earlier, there are two areas we are closely watching here at AltoVita. Is obviously Saudi Arabia and India. We know we will have a huge demand there for 2024, no doubt. Again, any insight you can share, maybe?
Yes, I don't know India particularly well. It's not part of my remit, but I know a lot about Saudi Arabia. Middle East falls under my remit. And it's interesting, and maybe it's because we're a technology firm. We're not seeing all of the hype isn't translating into business for us yet. We know it's coming. But I think a large number of the projects are still, they're breaking ground. So the hotels aren't built yet. So the evaluation of the tech stack is probably something 2 or more years away. The interesting thing that we are seeing is that a lot of the inventory that is being built is branded. So we're seeing very little independent accommodation coming through Saudi Arabia at the moment. It's all Hiltons, Hyatts, Marriotts, etc. And I think that trend will continue for a little bit longer, and then maybe the independent sector will follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of Saudi Arabia, similar experience. We are engaging with a number of clients over there now, both existing people who are moving more volume there. It was a really key location for a lot of our clients when they were extracting talent both from Ukraine and Russia when they stopped doing business there in the last couple of years. So we saw a lot of people move there, which put a demand on the properties. We're also seeing a lot of people who are dealing with, as you mentioned, construction now, and actually one of the few groups of clients who are less focused on cost as an initial thing. What they want is quality. What they want is to be able to get the best, because for a lot of these incredibly ambitious construction projects that both government and corporate that are going on in the region right now, they are trying to import the best talent from it, and they're trying to attract those people as well. So I think that is really going to be driven by not only availability, but also hitting those standards. And culturally, we're finding, working with companies over there as well, that when you begin to grow with one area, reputation is very, very important there. And once you're engaged with one of the large operations, then others suddenly are a lot more interested in talking to you and engaging with you as well. So huge growth. India has remained very healthy. To touch on the other location, even Cartus, which has a very large US domestic footprint, India remains our second most populous location for the amount of not only international inbound moves, but internally as well. India is a very large country. There is a very large domestic relocation market as well. So even there, with a country that size, there are opportunities for accommodation providers when people are looking for where they want to live permanently. Having those opportunities for people to go travel long distances and stay there. But India continues to grow, and as we heard in those earlier sessions, is going to continue by the looks of everyone's predictions there. So a huge area of focus.
Maybe just one other comment about Saudi Arabia. Recently, they've said that in order to do business in Saudi Arabia as a vendor, you need to be registered, have a company registered in Saudi Arabia. So that's going to be quite a high barrier to entry for a lot of companies, I would say.
Yeah, very, very true. Michael, I know you have been traveling and attending a lot of industry conferences recently. So maybe you can tell us what they're saying about what's going to happen in 2024. Resume of all your travels.
I think the most consistent answer is, who knows? Most people are predicting that the demand will be there. It won't grow to the levels that we've seen previously, but they're not expecting it to dip. So I think it's kind of business as usual. Good, but not fantastic, but certainly not bad. Nice, fair enough.
Well, I'm afraid we are now running out of time for everybody's happiness about cocktails. So please join me in thanking Andy and Michael. Thank you.